Hello, my friends. This is part 3 and the last part in a series of videos on predicting the price of houses. And we're also learning how to make predictions of anything that you can measure. For example, price of anything. And we've also used these same ideas, as I mentioned before, for baseball batting performance. Because for every game that a baseball player is in, they have a batting average and other ways of measuring how well they performed as a batter in that game. And we can look at the transits at the moment the batter was up, because all of this information is available online, all of this detail, and we can do that. There's so many different kinds of behavior. Any behavior that has a measurable score, you can use these techniques. And what we learned is the first thing we do is we look at the peak dates. And all we do, I want to summarize some key points because we've covered so much material in these videos. To summarize some key points about how to find the AstroSignature, I look at the peak dates. And in this graph we're looking at here, the orange line, this orange line is the actual prices. So we looked at these 3 peak dates. And we pull up the chart wheel and we start looking at the aspects or anything else we want to look at. And then sometimes we end up using other tools. I use the graphic ephemeris to see if midpoint structures involving Uranus and Neptune are happening at these times. And so for the first 2, it looked like there's midpoint structures occurring right at the peak. And for the third one, it was a little bit late. Was not quite right. And in fact, here's our blue graph. Look at it. It's peaking a little bit late. There it is. There it is. Those midpoint structures that I showed you in at the end of the previous video, in part 2, it said that we've got our prediction is going to be a little bit late, and there it is. On the down slope, here's the actual price. So, actually we didn't do too bad. We got the peak kind of close, but we've got the highest part of the peak towards the down slope. Now, this is the final AstroSignature as far as I've worked on it. Where I ended. I could keep going, but this is after I produced the graph with just the conjunctions and oppositions. Then I decided to add the squares. I played around with adjusting the orbs. I put in the semi-squares and sesquiquadrats, and I would just look at the graph. And does it match a little bit better? So I'm not going to take you through every little minute step that I did. You have the idea. A lot of times I just guess based on theory. I just say, well, let me try putting in the squares. I don't even look at charts because it takes so much time. So it's easier to just go into the customize the AstroSignature, add in the squares. There's also a trick with customizing, by the way, which is that you can use an editor like Notepad. Like, here's an AstroSignature. Well, that's not the one I want. Do I have it here? No, I don't have it open right now. But you can open it up in an editor. This is an example of a different one where we open the user interface. I'll show you what I'm talking about real quickly. When you go in here to Forecast, and you go to Electional Forecast, and you go to Main Forecast, and here is our forecast for house prices. I called it Uranus Neptune Midpoints. This was my second revision of it. Maybe I should change the name to House Price Forecast, but it's based on these Uranus Neptune midpoints. And when you go into the Customize, and we go to the Customize Transit to Transit, it tells us down here that this is saved in file rnfg.def. And for very fast customizing, we can actually open this file in a program like Notepad. I'll open it up. rnfg.def. And you get this list of things, and what this is saying is IMP is interpret midpoint, 8 is Uranus to Neptune, Pluto. It's a bunch of codes. But when you get used to these codes, you can copy and paste them. And over here is the aspect. 0 is conjunction 180. You can copy, paste them, change the 180 to 90, and it's a little faster. And here's the orb, 15 degrees. You can, it's 15 degrees and then 7.5 degrees down here. This is the applying and separating orbs for the 90 degree. It looks intimidating at first, but basically you can get the idea of it. I'm just mentioning this because when you work in this a lot, sometimes it's faster to do it with an editor than to go in and enter each one with the nice pretty user interface. Anyway, I hope you got the idea. You can just use the interface if you don't feel comfortable looking at codes and just insert another item that's similar to these with squares and so on. So I just guessed. I didn't even look at the charts at all. I just said, well, according to theory, if the conjunction oppositions work, the squares should work with half the orb, and they should not be as powerful, so I'll give them smaller strength. I just did it based on theory. And once you get a graph that works a little bit, you can keep adjusting. And when I added the squares in, it matched a little bit better. And I add the semi-squares and sesquiquadrats, I felt like it matched a little bit better. Now, another thing you do to improve the graph is you can look at when the forecast is wrong. Here it's completely wrong. Right in here. This is, let's see, June. It's about 3/4 from November 2002 to 2008. So somewhere in here around 2007 or so, the graph is completely wrong. The price is remaining high, and I've got it down to nothing. So I will look at this date. I'll produce the graph in a larger format. It'll give me more details of dates, and I'll find this date, and I'll try to figure out what is going on that kept the price high when I thought it would go down. So you can look at when your forecast is wrong. Or over here, we gave it too many points. We said it was going to go up so much, it only went up a little. I'm not as concerned about that as I am with this being completely wrong. And every time you change the graph, you can fix this, and then it may make the rest of your graph go crazy. Because whatever you're looking at here is happening at other times. What I found is that if your theory is accurate, it'll start working. Like you find something in here that makes sense, like maybe trines of planets to the midpoint. You find something that's going on that's consistent with what you were doing before, and you find out how the astrology really works. Like, for example, would a planet trine a midpoint? What if Pluto's trine Uranus, Neptune midpoint? I don't know if it could be powerful and related to the house of prices. I really don't know. But I can stick it in there, and sometimes you make a guess, and wow, all of a sudden, it fixes this. It does not disturb anything else. And so this is called knowledge discovery through data visualization. So it takes a lot of tinkering, a lot of experimenting to discover exactly what the formula is. And here I'm only using midpoints. I'm not even looking at any aspects. Maybe if I look at what vibration those midpoints are in, certain vibrations may work better. But you want to be consistent. Don't just throw in arbitrary things, because if you do that, it's what we call overfitting. It will not match when you test against new data. Now, there's one point I want to make about when I produced this graph. And when I saw this, I got very excited. It was like, whoa, maybe we really found something, which is this. I only looked at these 3 peak dates. I'm telling you what I did when I did the research. I just looked at this peak date, I looked at this peak date, and I looked at the 3rd peak date. And I said, it looks like Uranus Neptune is going on. That works for the first 2. For the 3rd one, not as well. It's just not as good a fit. But I did not look at any of these beginning dates. I'm not getting huge valleys and peaks. I'm getting a little bit of valleys and peaks, but, I could have gotten a huge peak up here, or something could have gone completely wrong. Didn't go completely wrong. That was kind of nice. But even more important, look what happens at the end. We got the prediction of the prices going up. What's going on right now. I did not look at that in my research. I only looked at these three, and the third one doesn't even work that well, but did not do too bad on these dates I did not look at, and did spectacularly well on this last thing, and I didn't even look at it. So, when you do this research, you know what you looked at, you know what you didn't look at, you know how much time you put into it, you know how much experimenting you did, you know how clean and simple your AstroSignature is. And, you have to just be honest with what you're doing. Are you putting in so many things and experimenting for months and it's inconsistent? You're just making stuff up. You're just overfitting. Or are you coming up with something that's theoretically simple and it already predicted, because I didn't look at it, this peak at the end? So for these reasons, I felt, you know what? This probably has some validity to it. Now, the big problem with this research, to me, housing prices, and the reason I'm not going to work on it some more. I mean, I could work on it more, you could work on it more, and you may make discoveries. You may discover that certain planets and signs will improve the graph, or certain aspects. You may make some very important discoveries. Why am I not going to do more research on this? One big reason. Because I can't get more data. So no matter how good my forecast is, and, it could match perfectly with a very simple formula, we don't have more data to test it with. We've got to wait 30 years to get 30 more years of data. Whereas when we do bipolar research, there are more people out there with bipolar. We can get that data, try to collect it and test our AstroSignature for bipolar disorder or for baseball batting performance. We have huge amounts of data. It's like we would almost never run out. There's just so much data that's been saved. So I personally like to do research where I can continue to test the formula. And that's why I'm so excited about the bipolar disorder research, because the results are fantastic. I mean, even way more impressive than this is, even though looks very promising. I mean, just spectacular. And we have tested it against new data, and in the future we can get more data. There are more people with bipolar disorder, and it could be, it can be tested with new data. That's the trick. So, one of the problems with financial research is you need a lot of data to build a good model. I needed all this to, if I only looked at one peak, it's not going to tell me much. I got enough data here to build something that looks compelling. It looks impressive. But now I'm out of data. So that's why I don't do financial research, is because I don't like running out of data. But this is exciting that we have this. And what is good about this is that it's obviously very, very useful. And we will see if this forecast is, it proves to be accurate. And also, every person is different. If you are deeply into economics and financial forecasting, then you're probably much more motivated and excited to improve this formula. And please do it. We would love this. For the more people researching, the better. And using any theory at all, we have the tools here to graph the actual data, the predicted data. And if I had the actual prices, it'll tell us the actual correlation coefficient and how statistically significant it is. So, economics and forecasting is just not a major interest of mine. We all have our interests, and plus I can't get more data. So, it's not something I will take any further, although it's tempting because it looks like we're on track. But this can be improved. all research. It is time consuming, but you learn a lot. You learn a lot about what works, what doesn't work. And as with anything, you develop facility with it. You get the feel of how you do things by actually doing it. Okay, my friends, but again, I got to just say it one more time. This thing at the end, where the graph is going up, 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 matching the actual data, that's the one that got me really excited. Like, oh my God, I did not look at this at all. That just really pretty convincing. That there's a good chance we're really onto something. Most important, we're data driven, evidence based. Why are we making forecasts about this planet and this sign is going to make house prices go up? Why not graph it and see if it's true? Why are we still in the year 2021 making claims about what's going to happen with a certain stock, a certain housing prices based on a theory, and we haven't even graphed it when we can do it? The software is available to do all this stuff, and the information is available, as I'm showing right here. So, it's the 21st century. It's time to start using these things. They're exciting. They're fun. You can really see what's going on. That's the thing you can't really fully appreciate just by watching this is, like, sometimes we have teams of researchers, and when someone's in there experimenting and you find out that if you make the orb bigger or smaller, or you add this in and it's consistent with the theory, the graph fits better. Every time we do that, it matches our previous discoveries. So we're building a body of theory that we consistently apply to all of these studies. We're using the same ideas with midpoint structures here that we used with our accident forecasting. It's just different planets for a different result. But the idea of using half the orb when you double the vibration, etc., all the same ideas, that the direct ones are more powerful, they get more points, same ideas we use in other research. So we're finding consistent ideas that work in many different kinds of research. Okay, my friends, that's it. The forecast of housing prices, how it's done relatively quickly and very, very interesting. I am, last thing I'm going to say. How impressive is this? I will say this, for my own use, because there's some things going on, in my own life regarding buying and selling houses. I'm going to use this. I mean, if I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to try to do it within the next year or so. By 2023, because I do think there's a good chance that this graph is telling me is telling me good information. So I'm putting some credence in it myself. Maybe we'll find out. We'll find out. We don't know for certain. Nobody does. I mean, look at the economics experts, how often they're wrong. So nobody knows. But I think there's, that's just my own sense of it. Okay. Thank you very much for listening, my friends. God bless. Namaste.